And welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna keep watching the Napoleonic Wars series. And today it's Napoleon 1813 and it's the road to Leipzig. I think it's how you pronounce it, Leipzig. Right? Last episode was pretty insane, right? I mean, it was an disastrous retreat from Moscow and from Russia, right? But it was more disastrous when he went into Russia, like they pointed out in the video, so yeah. But we're gonna see what's gonna happen next, right? Original videos down below, and let's go. What a career Napoleon has ruined. Having gained so much glory, he could bestow peace on Europe. He has not done so. The spell is broken.
Wow. 1812 had been a disastrous year for Napoleon. His invasion of Russia had led to the almost total destruction of an army of 500,000 men.
Yep.
Now Poland and Germany were wide open to Russian attack.
Yep.
Some advised Emperor Alexander that this was the time to make a favourable peace with Napoleon. Russia's own armies had been mauled and Western Russia devastated.
I mean, that's true, and you know, I mean, it's good that he has people who are in his circle around him who are not just saying, oh yeah, go attack, and then attacking Napoleon could be fatal. But at this time, it was probably a good time to strike, right? Napoleon has gained some conscription soldiers, right? But they are probably in France and probably by the Rhine, not in Poland or Prussia, right? Okay, fair enough.
But Alexander was determined to see Napoleon defeated for good.
Yeah.
To free Europe from his clutches and avenge Moscow's destruction by taking Paris.
But now we have to be fair here, right? Was it really Napoleon who burned Moscow down? I understand they looted, probably killed civilians and whatnot, right? They did do that, and criminals. It was the Russians who burned it down, right? So, you know, okay.
Napoleon's allies were deserting him.
Yeah, Prussia.
Russian troops had already agreed a truce with the Russians.
Of course.
Schwarzenberg's corps marched back to Austria, which assumed a policy of watchful neutrality.
Okay.
Napoleon had left Marshal Murat in charge of the remnants of the army. But he left for the Kingdom of Naples, hoping to cut a deal with the Allies that would let him keep his throne.
Right, because he was made King of Naples. Wow. And he just leaves like that. I mean, Napoleon did the same. I mean, you can see it from both their perspective. I mean, if Murat is the King of Naples, I mean, he's going to protect the Kingdom of Naples. You would hope, right? And he sees that Napoleon is probably on his last foot here, right? I mean, okay. But it's also treacherous, but okay.
He was replaced by Napoleon's stepson, Eugene, who'd proved himself a brave and able soldier in Russia, but was unused to independent command.
Yeah.
And now faced odds of 4-1.
Yeah.
As Russian forces advanced through Poland, he continued to retreat west, leaving garrisons to hold strategic fortresses, most of which were soon besieged.
Yeah, makes sense. But I mean, the reason why I do this is to slow the outnumbering enemy forces that's advancing on you, right? To have sieges here. Also, your numbers are going down when you need to put troops into those cities, right? Okay. But it also dooms all those soldiers who are there because they will lose the siege. Because maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think Napoleon's gonna go to Prussia or Poland to save those cities or sieges, right? Maybe I could be wrong, but you know, but it's to slow the enemy down. Okay.
On the 7th of February, Russian troops entered Warsaw unopposed.
Yeah.
Napoleon's Polish client state, the Duchy of Warsaw, effectively ceased to exist.
Makes sense.
3 weeks later, Russian troops entered Berlin, while Sweden joined the Allies.
Okay.
Sweden was ruled by Napoleon's former Marshal
Ah.
Bernadotte, now officially known as Crown Prince Karl Johan.
Ah. He was born in Gascony. Yeah. Okay, promoted to General of Division age 31. That's pretty cool. Yeah, disgraced. Wagram. Yeah, Wagram was a disaster. And he was nearly court-martial at Jena, right? I mean, sure. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty weird... Why him, though? Okay.
Many would accuse him of betraying Napoleon, but he'd always been clear that once he became Sweden's crown prince, he'd pursue Swedish interests, which is what he now claimed to do.
That's fair enough, because I said the same thing about Murat, right? Now that he was, I don't know how long, when he became king of Naples, but he will probably follow Naples' interests, right? Either be neutral or on the side of the coalitions, because they probably see that Napoleon lost in Russia is a pretty weak position that Napoleon is in, and Spain, right? But again, it's Napoleon, so you gotta be careful, but okay.
In exchange for Norway, to be taken from France's ally Denmark, and £1 million from Britain, Bernadotte agreed to join what was now the 6th coalition against France since the Revolution.
Wow.
With an army of 30,000 troops.
Wow. Let's just look at which nations have been in all of the coalitions, right? So, I mean, repeated nations, right? So you have Britain in all 6 coalitions. Yeah. You have Austria in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th coalition, right? Because in the 6th now, they're neutral, right? You have Prussia in, what, 2 of them? Yeah. You have Russia in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th. And then you have, I think that's Royalist France, or is that... I think that's Royalist France, right? Okay.
10 days later, King Frederick William of Prussia declared war on France.
Makes sense.
It followed weeks of indecision. The king was widely seen as a weak character and terrified of Napoleon. But with guarantees of Russian military support, the return of lost territory, and enormous financial and material aid from Britain, he agreed to field an army of 80,000 men.
I mean, where's Britain getting all this money from? I thought they were at war as well with the US, War of 1812, right? Pretty cool. But one thing, sure, he's weak, but I mean, indecisive about Napoleon. Even though we have Vision 2020 of Napoleon's feats, I mean, after Austerlitz and Jena, I mean, and Ulm, like, it's not fear as more as respect, I think it should be. But if he fears Napoleon, I mean, it makes sense. But you know, if you wait too long on it, you're gonna miss an opportunity, right? Prussia wants to probably expand its territory, so Frederick William has to do what he has to do, right? Okay.
On the 17th of March, he issued a proclamation to the people of Prussia and Germany. "And mein Volk, to my people," summoning them to fight for Prussia and Germany's honor, in what would soon be known as the German War of Liberation.
Okay.
The Prussian army had been greatly reformed since its humiliating defeat to Napoleon in 1806.
I mean, it's good that they have reformed, because the Austrians also had reform after they lost at Austerlitz, right? And then they did defeat Napoleon at Aspern, right? So they did learn. right? But then Napoleon defeated Wagram, but that was a bloodbath. So, you know, so Napoleon's enemies are learning. Very interesting.
A military commission headed by General von Scharnhorst had sacked nearly 200 old generals and abolished flogging,
Wow.
expanded recruitment, and introduced exams for officers, and overhauled training, tactics, and drill. When Napoleon met the new Prussian army in battle 2 months later, he remarked, "These animals have learned something."
Yeah.
Small consolation, they'd learned most of it from him.
Yep. Only a short time ago, I was the conqueror of the world, commanding the largest and finest army of modern times. That's all gone now. Yep.
As his enemies massed in Germany, Napoleon was in Paris, working tirelessly to build a new army with which to face them.
Which makes sense.
137,000 new conscripts joined the army, and laws passed to call up 100,000 more.
Okay.
While 40,000 veterans from the army in Spain, 16,000 Marines, and 80,000 men of the National Guard, a home defense force, were transferred to Germany.
Ooh, I mean, I can understand the thinking of you need more troops to protect Germany because Germany is in between France and its enemies. But then again, you take away France's defense, domestic defense, right? The National Guard, right? So, okay, the Marines, sure. You're taking away veterans. I hope it's not veterans that are in Spain that goes out of Spain, or I mean, I don't care if I hope it's history. Yeah, okay. Oh, whatever.
The new conscripts were nicknamed Marie-Louises, after Napoleon's young wife, who'd passed the new conscription laws in his absence.
Okay.
They were young and raw.
Yep.
2/3 were teenagers.
Wow.
And there was a severe lack of experienced officers and NCOs.
Yeah, it makes sense.
In short, the countless irreplaceable veterans now lying beneath Russian soil.
Yep, and in Spain.
There was also a critical shortage of cavalry, a crisis mocked by British satirists.
I mean, the Brits, this is propaganda at its finest, right? I mean, the propaganda about Napoleon being short and all that, right? That's the Brits, right? I mean, if you're comparing, I mean, I think Admiral Nelson was shorter than Napoleon. But when you talk about Admiral Nelson, he's like this big guy, huge guy, like larger than life character, right? And Napoleon, this tiny, angry man, right? But okay.
It would take Napoleon longer to replace the many thousands of horses and trained horsemen who perished in Russia.
And Spain.
When Napoleon left Paris for Germany in mid-April, the French situation was precarious.
Yeah, gonna be surrounded.
Had been forced back behind the river Elbe to the fortified city of Magdeburg. Dresden, the capital of Saxony, had fallen to the Prussians. The Duchy of Mecklenburg-Schwerin became the first German state to defect from Napoleon's Confederation of the Rhine.
Makes sense.
Russian Cossacks raided as far as Hamburg, inspiring local revolts against French occupying forces.
Cossacks in
Meanwhile,
Hamburg.
Austria stood on the sidelines, so far declining to back either side.
Which, I mean, makes sense. They know about how the war has gone. They were in Russia a corps or two, whatever. They know what it's like fighting Napoleon as well, and Napoleon has married the daughter of the emperor, right? So, okay.
Napoleon's miraculous feat of organization meant he now had more than 200,000 troops in Germany.
But their conscripts...
The emperor's personal magnetism was undimmed. The morale of his army was high.
Okay.
The Russians, on the other hand, lost their iconic commander, Field Marshal Kutuzov, to pneumonia on the 28th of April.
That's a big blow.
His role was taken over by General Wittgenstein.
Okay.
Russian troops were exhausted
Yeah.
and far from home. Their army weakened by the need to contain French garrisons across Poland and Germany.
So the garrisons did its job, right? Weaken, slow down the enemy. And it makes sense. I mean, the Russians have fought in Russia and then marched and fought out of Russia into Prussia and Poland. So it makes sense.
Prussia and Sweden had yet to fully mobilize their strength, and Allied forces barely mustered 100,000 men.
Looks like Napoleon can take them out, but he has conscripts.
They were now heavily outnumbered by Napoleon, and the French Emperor decided to strike quickly.
Makes sense.
He ordered Marshal Davout to Hamburg with 35,000 men to secure his northern flank. He would march against the Russian and Prussian forces converging on Leipzig to force a decisive battle. Victory would make Austria think twice about joining the Allies, allow him to rescue the 90,000 men trapped in garrisons across Germany and Poland, and re-establish his dominance over Europe.
Okay, so I was wrong. He was gonna rescue them. Okay. If the art of war was only the art of not taking risks, glory would belong to mediocrities. Mediocrity? Whatever. We need a full triumph.
As Napoleon advanced on Leipzig, the Allies faced a predicament.
Yep.
To risk battle against Napoleon's larger army, or give up Germany without a fight. A potentially devastating blow to Allied morale and any chance of winning Austria over to their cause.
Yeah.
Allied headquarters made the bold decision to attack.
Okay,
They knew most of Napoleon's army was made up of raw conscripts.
Yep.
That their own troops were better trained and had a great superiority in cavalry and artillery.
Yep.
The Allies agreed that as Napoleon crossed the Saale River, they would hit his right flank before he could concentrate the full mass of his forces. The two armies were on a collision course, but Napoleon's shortage of cavalry meant he lacked information about Allied movements.
Yep.
On the 1st of May, Marshal Bessières, commanding the cavalry in Murat's absence, was carrying out reconnaissance himself. He was hit by a cannonball, killed instantly.
Oh, that's a big
Bessières
blow.
was the second of Napoleon's marshals to be killed in action.
Yep.
And like Lannes, an old comrade and trusted friend.
Yep. Wow, that's a big blow.
The Allies...
But the Russians also lost their commander, so... You know, I see the Austrians are lingering there on the border. Okay.
were able to surprise Napoleon, falling on Marshal Ney's Third Corps near Lutzen. Ney's troops had to cling on in the face of a Russian and Prussian onslaught, while Napoleon rapidly redirected his other corps to fall on the enemy's flanks.
Okay. Looks like a major battle.
At one stage, Napoleon had to personally help rally routing troops as they broke in the face of determined Prussian assaults. But on the whole, his young conscripts fought with courage. And despite hours of savage fighting, Wittgenstein could not exploit his early advantage.
Okay.
As French reinforcements arrived, the battle turned against him. Towards dusk, the Allies were forced to break off the engagement, though they'd inflicted around 22,000 casualties, losing just half as many men. General von Scharnhorst, mortally wounded, was among them. Crucially, Napoleon's lack of cavalry meant he was unable to pursue the enemy, who retreated in good order. Expecting the Prussians to fall back on Berlin, Napoleon sent Marshal Ney in pursuit, while he continued east. But the Allied army stayed together, withdrawing to a defensive position at Bautzen, deliberately close to the Austrian border, hoping to entice Schwarzenberg to intervene, and daring Napoleon to violate Austrian neutrality.
Wow, they're smart, and they have learned that they need to be close together, right? Because it's a Prussian corps or army, and there's a Russian army. They need to coordinate and communicate, right? If they split off, I mean, Napoleon can just take them one by one, right? So, okay. And the Austrians might join. Uh-oh.
Neither happened.
Okay.
Instead, Napoleon ordered Ney to swing south to fall on the Allies' northern flank,
Uh-oh.
while he launched a frontal assault to pin them in place.
I mean, this looks like the Allies gonna lose.
The battle lasted 2 days,
Wow.
as French infantry struggled forward against the Prussian and Russian lines. But a misunderstanding over Ney's orders caused a delay that allowed the Allies to narrowly escape Napoleon's trap.
Wow. Lucky.
Once more, the Allies fought with great determination and inflicted many more losses than they suffered.
I mean, that's not good for Napoleon. Usually it's the other way around. And usually Napoleon has less men. But here Napoleon actually have almost double the men. Maybe not in the same spot, but he has sort of double the men, right? And he gets more than double the casualties. That's not good for Napoleon. And their conscripts, maybe he lost a lot of veterans here, right, as well. So it's looking bad for Napoleon.
There were more casualties during the pursuit, including the next day General Duroc,
Wow.
Grand Marshal of the Palace, responsible for Napoleon's personal arrangements, and his closest surviving friend.
Wow.
Riding with Napoleon's staff, a freak cannon shot ricocheted off a tree and disemboweled him.
Wow.
His slow, painful death deeply upset Napoleon.
Yeah, he's losing everybody.
The Emperor continued his pursuit to Breslau, once again hindered by his lack of experienced cavalry, while Oudinot was sent north to take Berlin, but was held at Luckau by von Bülow's Prussian corps.
Wow.
On the 2nd of June, with both sides strained to breaking point,
Yep.
neutral Austria proposed a ceasefire, which, to the surprise of many, Napoleon accepted.
Wow. Okay. My eagles are again victorious, but my star is setting. Okay.
The armistice of Plaswitz would last more than 2 months, a period of
What?
intense diplomacy and military mobilization by both
Yeah.
sides.
I mean, that time of an armistice is usually either a period of escalation of military force or a decrease of it, right? So, yeah, nice. I mean, sure. Okay,
Napoleon wanted time to rebuild his cavalry,
makes
a
sense.
shortage of which had allowed the Allies to escape twice.
And the Allies gonna build up troops.
But he also wanted to keep Austria on side, which he feared might join the Allies with
Yep.
200,000 troops,
Yep,
even though Emperor Francis I was now his father-in-law,
yep.
since Napoleon's marriage to his daughter Marie-Louise in 1810.
But I don't think he cares about that. I mean, he probably cares a little about that, but I don't think so, because royal families have always feuded with each other. It's nothing new, so it wouldn't be that weird that Austria would join on the coalition side, right? Against Napoleon and against technically his daughter, right? The emperor's daughter. But, you know.
Austrian Foreign Minister Clemens von Metternich, who'd become one of 19th century Europe's most influential statesmen, now took center stage. Metternich wanted peace and to see Austria restored as a great European power.
Okay.
Which meant Napoleon contained, but not crushed, which would hand too much power to Russia.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because the balance of power, I mean, you need a strong France because Russia, but also you need kind of a strong Prussia against Austria, sort of, right? A little bit like that.
In June, he he travelled to Dresden to ask Napoleon to make concessions, while
Okay.
promising the Allies that if he did not, Austria would join them.
Okay. Ultimatum.
But Napoleon dismissed Metternich's terms out of hand.
Wow.
He would not return the Illyrian provinces to Austria, agree to the repartition of Poland,
Wow.
or the breakup of the Confederation of the Rhine.
I mean, basically, sort of everything that Napoleon has done against Austria, right? What Austria has lost, right? They also lost influence in Italy, but, you know, they lost the Illyrian Peninsula, or not Peninsula, but Illyrian coast there. They lost their part of Poland, and they lost the Holy Roman Empire, which is now Confederation of the Rhine, right? So it would basically, I understand Napoleon, he will lose everything that he has gained by when he defeated Austria numerous times, and Prussia once or twice, and Russia like 3 times or something, right? So I can understand. Okay.
All were out of the question.
But now Austria is on the coalition side, right?
Napoleon famously threw his hat to the ground in fury. "Peace and war lie in your Majesty's hands," Metternich is said to have warned him. "Today you can still make peace. Tomorrow it may be too late."
Wow.
But Napoleon preferred war to what he called a humiliating peace.
It sort of would be, but okay. Expect a defeat whenever the Emperor attacks in person. Attack and defeat his lieutenants whenever you can. Wow. They've learned.
On the 12th of August 1813, Austria joined the 6th Coalition
Okay.
and declared war on France.
Yep.
The Allies now had a numerical advantage of 3-2.
Yep.
And a new strategy, the Trachenberg Plan. Recognizing Napoleon's genius, the Allies would avoid battle with the Emperor and instead target his marshals, threaten his flanks, and wear down French forces.
I mean, that's a great plan, and they've learned from their mistakes, and they respect Napoleon as a commander, and they know if they go head to head against Napoleon, they probably will lose. So they will go after his corps, right? His lieutenants, as they call them, right? Which makes sense, and they have the numerical superiority, which they can do that. Okay, okay.
Until it was time to close in for the kill. Over the next few months, the coalition would also receive massive material support from Britain, including £8 million in silver and gold coin, 200 cannon with transport, 120,000 firearms, 18 million rounds of ammunition, 23,000 barrels of gunpowder, 30,000 swords and sabres, 150,000 uniforms.
I mean, all this, how do they transport? Do they go through like Denmark and Sweden to like Prussia and transport it? Like, maybe, probably. I mean, look at all these things. Wow.
175,000 pairs of boots.
Yep.
1.5 million pounds of beef, biscuit and flour.
Important.
And 28,000 gallons of rum and brandy.
The most important one.
The total value of British aid to the coalition in 1813 was £11.3 million. Today, worth around $500 million.
Let's think of the context here, right? 1813. I believe I believe Britain is at war with the US still, right? The War of 1812, right? And they managed to do this at the same time. Where are they getting this money from? The colonies, maybe? I don't know. Like, I guess so. Okay.
Napoleon, meanwhile, had turned Dresden into a major supply depot and strengthened his cavalry arm, though it remained a pale shadow of its glorious past. Murat returned to lead it, his secret approach to the Allies having been rebuffed. But when news arrived of King Joseph's disastrous defeat to Wellington's Anglo-Spanish-Portuguese army at the Battle of Vittoria, Napoleon had to send Marshal Soult, one of his best commanders, to salvage the situation.
Okay.
On the 15th of August, Napoleon left Dresden and advanced against what he considered the most urgent threat: the joint Prussian-Russian army of Silesia, commanded by General Gebhard von Blücher, soon to win the nickname Marshal Vorwärts, Marshal Forwards, for his aggressive leadership.
Wow. I mean, I think I can see the strategy of what the coalition is gonna do. I mean, Schwarzenberg, how many troops did they have? Like 100,000 or something there, 150? I mean, Napoleon attacked Blücher, right? And then he probably would leave a corps or two behind, and then Schwarzenberg would just attack that corps, right? So, okay. And then Bernadotte from the north.
But Blücher followed the new plan and retreated when he learned of Napoleon's advance.
Wow.
Napoleon then received news from Marshal Saint-Cyr, holding Dresden with 20,000 men, that Schwarzenberg's gigantic army of Bohemia was approaching.
Yep.
And the city and its supplies were in danger.
Yep.
Napoleon left Marshal MacDonald to keep an eye on Blücher and raced back to Dresden, sending Van Damme's First Corps to threaten Schwarzenberg's communications.
I mean, you have to give it to Napoleon. He's quick on his feet, right? Still. Right? He's keeping an eye on Blücher and going back to Schwarzenberg. But I mean, Napoleon has to go back and forth, and that's the Allies' plan, right? Just retreat when Napoleon is coming forward, right? Okay.
By the time the Allied assault began, enough reinforcements had arrived to fight off the attack.
Wow.
The next day, despite being heavily outnumbered, Napoleon ordered a counterattack.
Wow.
Struggling through mud and heavy rain, Marshal Murat's advance, supported by Victor's Second Corps, broke the Allied left flank.
So Murat is there. Okay. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
13,000 prisoners.
Wow.
The Allies had suffered a disastrous defeat because they'd ignored their own rule.
Yep.
Don't take on Napoleon in battle.
Wow.
But news soon arrived that turned the situation on its head. Marshal Oudinot had resumed his advance on Berlin with 66,000 men. But in 3 days of heavy combat around Grossbeeren, he was defeated by Bernadotte's Army of the North. Some of the most savage fighting was between Napoleon's Saxon allies and von Bülow's Prussians, two German states that for now remained on opposing sides.
Oh, foreshadowing.
3 days later, at the Katzbach River, Blücher inflicted a crushing defeat on Marshal MacDonald, driving some French troops into the river itself.
Wow.
MacDonald lost 30,000 men, 3 eagles and 100 guns.
Wow.
For Blücher's 22,000 casualties.
Wow. Napoleon is losing.
3 days after Napoleon's victory at Dresden, as Van Damme's corps pursued the Allies, it became trapped in wooded valleys around Kulm and was overrun.
Wow.
General Van Damme himself was dragged from his horse by Cossacks, as he and 10,000 of his men were made prisoner.
Wow.
Napoleon sent Ney to take over from Oudinot, who engaged Bülow's Prussian corps at Dennewitz.
Uh-oh. I mean, as good as Napoleon's marshals are, right? They're not as good as Napoleon. We can just see it here. But it's also the coalition's tactic as well, right? So, you know, they just don't have it like Napoleon has it. You see, like 3 or 4 of his marshals and commanders are just losing. Wow.
Russians fighting to save Berlin held their own until Russian and Swedish reinforcements arrived to turn the battle decisively in the Allies' favor.
Okay.
Ney's retreat became a rout, with the loss of another 22,000 men.
Wow. Napoleon's losing, or...
Napoleon's brilliant victory at Dresden had been completely overturned
Yep.
in just 10 days. The Allied plan was working. Napoleon became increasingly frustrated as Allied armies withdrew wherever he advanced, and advanced wherever he was not.
Yep.
His teenage conscripts were exhausted by constant marching.
Yep.
And famished as Saxony had been stripped bare of supplies. Thousands fell sick, thousands more deserted.
Yep. Makes sense. They're just conscripts.
Russian and Prussian light troops were now operating behind Napoleon's army, harassing his communications with France. Many of Napoleon's marshals advised him to pull back to the River Rhine.
I mean, let's just think, this, it's not familiar, but it looks and feels like it's like Russia all over again, right? Napoleon is in deep trying to save Confederation of the Rhine, right? And Saxony. But his marshals and commanders are being defeated, like 4 defeats, and then Napoleon won at Dresden. Yeah, Dresden is overshadowed, and now he has the dilemma: would he retreat now back closer to France? Will he stay like in Saxony, or like go to Westphalia or Bavaria? Right? This is the dilemma.
But Napoleon wasn't giving up Germany without a fight.
Okay. There will inevitably be a great battle at Leipzig. Wow. Okay.
By October 1813, Napoleon faced 250,000 Allied troops in Germany, converging on him from 3 directions. 900 miles away, Field Marshal Wellington was crossing the Bidassoa River into France, the first enemy army on French soil in nearly 20 years.
Wow.
While the Kingdom of Bavaria, a French ally since the days of Austerlitz, had secretly agreed to switch sides and would declare war on France on the 14th of October.
Napoleon is losing allies, and the Brits and Spaniards are on French soil. This is not looking good, okay.
Napoleon planned to defend the line of the River Elbe. But the arrival of General Bennigsen's reserve Russian army freed up Blücher, who suddenly marched to join forces with Bernadotte and forced his way across the Elbe at Wartenberg. Napoleon went north with 150,000 men, seeking the decisive battle that would change his fortunes. But once more, Blücher narrowly escaped him.
Okay.
Then came news from Murat, who'd been left with 67,000 men to cover Schwarzenberg. The enemy had bypassed Dresden and was heading for Leipzig. If the city fell, Napoleon would be cut off from France.
Yep.
Once more, he was advised to fall back to the Rhine. But instead, Napoleon ordered all his forces to concentrate at Leipzig.
But I mean, we've seen this before with Napoleon previously, that his commanders or marshals says to him, oh, we should probably do this or do this retreat or go back here or whatever. And then Napoleon says, no, we're going to do this. And then he defeats an army. Like, so he could defeat them here. At this point, I don't know. Let's keep going.
He would risk everything.
Yep.
In one great battle to decide the fate of his empire and the fate of Europe.
Wow, epic. All right. That was pretty intense. And it's the road to Leipzig. So we're gonna see the Battle of Leipzig, I'm guessing. Right? That was amazing. Dresden. Battle of Dresden. I mean, Napoleon. Oh, nice victory. And then his marshals lost like 4 battles or something. So it got overshadowed. Makes sense. The Brits are on French soil. I mean, Bavaria switched to the coalition side. I mean, everything is going downhill for Napoleon, but it has since like Aspirin, right? sort of, and Spain, and then Russia, right? And now Germany. But okay, it's gonna be interesting to see the rest of this series. It's an amazing series. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.